Good morning, everyone. I'm actually going to give you a story that's quite personal about how you can not enter despair and how when a problem or an issue arises, how you have to meet it. So despair isn't an option. And part of it is that individually we are all called to account when we see that something could move or change and whether we respond. And I'm going to talk about response and the world that we face. And there is, as you know, I'm also a director of Grameen, and we've got lots of things happening in social business with Professor Yanis and the team here and all the other directors that are present. But it actually is about doing something. So you pick up a newspaper, you read anything, it's very, very easy to go into despair because there's the changing social fabric. We've heard all about that today. There's very complex systems where one thing happens in one part of the world then impacts another part of the world. There's an increasing population. There's more of us than ever before. There's growing inequality. We've spoken about that. There is technology in the way technology is disrupting everything, and we've been through how technology has disrupted the manufacturing base, but now we're about to see how it now affects the middle class and white collar jobs. And the impact, if you look at some of those reports where 43% of the population will lose their job in the next sort of 10, 15 years, that's the sort of numbers that a lot of people have academic studies show. And then there's a power shift. We're seeing power move from the West into China and into Asia, and we're a Western country smack bang in Asia with whatever, all of the different things that Asia represents for Australia. And then we see the impact on the environment, and despite government rhetoric around the world, climate change and the impacts of climate change are being felt. I work in the Pacific. Try telling some of the Pacific islands that there's no rising sea levels. These things are real, and rainfall and what it's doing to agriculture. So what does that mean? The world's getting better and better, worse and worse, faster and faster. And this introduces a concept from philosophy of how you hold a dichotomy and a dialectic, and I'll talk further about that. Where do we have to start? We have to start with what we can do. The one step, when you notice something, what's the one step you can do? And there's a beautiful poem by David White. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first step, the one you didn't really want to take. And 8 years ago, I actually, as part of studying, I found myself in Taos Pueblo in New Mexico. And New Mexico is one of the poorest states in America, and it also has the lowest income level, and it has a very high Indigenous population. So I'm going to use that as an example because it shows what can you do in a regional area, what can you do with people who live in a community and with a high percentage of Indigenous people. So that's what Taos Pueblo, there's a number of buildings, but that's what one of them looks like. But what it is the thing about an appropriate response. The appropriate response is to see and notice what's going on. And then to say, how do I fit into that? And what's the system and interconnectiveness of that particular place? And what's the questions that I need to ask? And then how do I apply my own creativity? And then how do I value and enter into relationship? Because you can't solve a challenge or a problem unless you see yourself in it. If it's out there, I can't solve it, but if it belongs to me and I'm part of this community, then I start to think about it differently. So I'm going to go through those points in more detail. Noticing where other people are suffering. And this sky where we live is no place to lose your wings. Love, love, love. Now, what does that mean? It means compassion. Hafiz's one of my favourite poets, and a lot of poets like Rumi. It's all about being human. It's about being here. It's about doing what you can do. And part of compassion, it's the heart of being the best possible human you can be. And you've seen that photo that there is. This is my first project I did with the Native American population. That is a traditional Native American fence. And then I asked them, because I had a bit of land, that was there, I asked them to build me a labyrinth. They'd never seen a labyrinth, but it actually is a Native American version of a labyrinth where you can sit in the circle in the middle and we go around to the 4 directions. Now, what I found, these people were incredibly talented. They had lots of building skills. So then I thought, okay, let's start doing building projects, because what do these people need? They need a job, and they need jobs that actually suit their skills. So if we're going to do something, we have to see ourselves as part of a solution. And there's a beautiful, I recommend that all of you read it. It's one of the Native American Hopi sayings. They've actually got a beautiful poem, that we are the ones we've been waiting for. So if we're the ones we've been waiting for, we can't wait for government, we can't wait for business, we can't wait for anyone. It means that we have to do something, so it's a real call to action. And this photo is, her back is my Native American niece, who realised there was an incredible problem with youth suicide, so she pulled together a lot of the community, and in the middle is my partner drumming. And what they do is they run a social business, actually teaching young people to be music DJs and musicians. And this is her getting the whole community out and doing a dance and a sing, because you've got to dance together and sing together if you're Native American to create a shared resonance. Taking a systems view. If in philosophy there's Indra's web, which is that we're all part of this interconnected web. So your problem is my problem, your challenge is my challenge, and my problems and my challenges are also yours. So we see ourselves as part of a system. And this photograph here is, if you would have heard about Standing Rock in South Dakota, there's a big thing about the water pipeline because it's going through Indigenous land, taking Indigenous water. Well, a number of people in the Taos Pueblo who don't have a lot of money decided that they would get the whole Taos community together to raise thousands of dollars to support people in South Dakota who were protesting the water thing. This is the ability, the next point is the ability to see the dialectic. I am not important, but then I'm really important. In creating social change. I can't do anything, but then I can do everything. It's holding this tension of the opposites. And this photograph is my Native American nephew who's out, he's not yelling, he's actually singing a water song and drumming at the top of his voice while he's being tear gassed, because he realised at 19 years old he has to go and get involved. So he went and got involved, and he's also running a social business which is creating Native American seeds to make corn and the like. The ability to hold and ask the questions, particularly when you go and work in other cultures, it's really, really important, or other communities. If you're a stranger, and I found myself a stranger in a strange land, I had to ask a lot of questions because I didn't know and notice a lot of things. I didn't know what was the right way. I had to be very mindful of what people wanted to do. If I was going to create a social business with them, what did they want to do? Not what I wanted to do with my Western, corporate advisory view of the world, but what is it that these people wanted? And one of the things is about being able to ask the big questions. Why is something there? And hold it without knowing the answer. And there's a Peter Block, who's a management theorist. He said the answer to how is yes. So you've just got to say yes. And that's this thing about Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet, and he says, hold the question, be comfortable not knowing, and then it will come. And this picture is Robert Mirabel, who is my Native American cousin, and he is a singer, but also he realised in Taos that a lot of the Native Americans were getting really fat and they had a lot of health problems. So what he's done is he's gone back to traditional farming methods, set up a food co-op, which is a social business, and that's creating a lot of change. Now, your preparedness to use and apply your creativity. That means letting go of what you're certain about. And it means the ability to keep iterating and learning. And this guy is one of my heroes. His name is Mike Reynolds. He's a near neighbour of mine. He's an architect, and if anyone has seen the movie Garbage Warrior, He believes in sustainable housing, and you can see in that photo he's creating, out of rubbish, he's creating housing. Now, because of him, I can do the work that I do in Taos, and because of him, he actually took on the state government of New Mexico and said that if anyone wants to build alternative housing, they should be able to do that without any building permits. And it's because of that I can build traditional and work with my Native American team, building traditional housing with no permits, no big architectural drawings. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo of what a drawing of a Native American house built looks like. It would make people, like I see Murray over there in the audience, it would make his hair go curly, even more curly. But it's your ability to work in the system, and it allows me freedom from too much legislation. And so this man lost a lot to do it. He kept iterating his building. This is one about willingness to value and be in reciprocal relationships. Now, that's my partner. We actually went on a hike, and anyway, someone took a photo of us. But what I had to learn was that if I was going to work with people, that I had to be in a relationship with them and be prepared to learn a lot myself. And when I remember in the 1990s, I was travelling around America and I was reading Bank to the Poor, Professor Yanis's book, and it talked about there are skills and assets that the people that are poorer have that can give you. And I realised that I might be rich in many ways, but I was very, very poor compared to a lot of the Native Americans and Indigenous people that I deal with. They are very, very wealthy, but wealthy in different wealth. And so it gives you this ability to look at things and say, I'm learning, I might be learning different things, but there's an exchange that's going on, and there's a lot of dignity in that exchange. And the final thing is get involved. And I think that in Australia we can be very cynical about stuff. And it's about and we can be fairly overwhelmed and powerless, but it's actually not until we get involved that we're doing something about it. There's an energy and a momentum. And this photo is my Native American mother-in-law, Rose, and the reason she's such an inspiration, she's about to turn 87, and she gets out and dances, cooks, does whatever is required to support all our family social businesses, and she also says she has to be part of it. And so age is not a barrier, income isn't a barrier, it's actually your preparedness to get involved. And you don't have to do a lot, you just start where you are. Take that first step, as David White says. And what you then do is see what unfolds, and it's better to go deep and keep learning and stay, so your learnings all get consolidated together. And you don't have to give anything that you don't have yourself, but you really need to say, I'm part of the solution. And it's a mind shift change to say that whatever I'm facing, I'm part of the solution. And that means that you look at the world differently. And I actually went through this presentation with one of my business friends the other night, and she said, I've just realised I don't do anything. I said, well, do one thing. Doesn't matter what it is, do one thing to get involved to help make a better Australia, a better Asia, a better world. So my message to you all is take the first step. Thank you.